Many years ago, I had the fabulous opportunity to work with this young artist. And I'd met her mother just the previous day. I must tell you how I met her mother. I was 18, my first visit to America. I was staying with a friend. And he decided to give me this big brother moment. He said, dude, be prepared, we're going to see Lucky Foxes. I thought Lucky Foxes is going to be this cool gaming arcade. Well, it turns out it wasn't. You know, when I went there were these poles and fabulous, beautiful, nude women dancing around them. And of course, and of all the fun things that you can imagine unfolded that evening, the most surprising was a stripper, apparently friends with my friend, jumped off the stage, sat next to me, and starts telling me about Anna, her daughter, who's absolutely talented. And I said, wait a minute, I know about you guys, but I had this serious moral dilemma, a complex one, because I come from a little bubble in Bangalore, India, and I didn't know strippers can be caring moms. I mean, strippers can be moms, And for me, the most beautiful thing was that she even said she loved what she did. Whenever I'm conflicted with such a thing, I remember what Bill Drury said. He said, when something's threatened your current model of the world, pay attention. You're about to learn something. Boy, did I learn something. I actually unlearned the ideal of the perfect family. And in fact, my teacher, Ranan Luri, I consider him a teacher. He's one of the coolest cartoonists. When I met him, he said, if you want to unlearn, hang out with children. They're perfect unlearners. So that's what I did. I started traveling and working with children. When I teach cartooning, I didn't necessarily teach them how to cartoon. I didn't want everyone to become cartoonists. I wanted them to use art to empower themselves, to feel confident. You know, observation skills is more important for me than, becoming cartoonists. So that's what I did. I love working with children. I want to show you a little collaboration. But before that, I was in Bangalore teaching at the school, and one kid gets up and says, Raghava. The kids are so animated. He's like, Raghava, the fastest thing in the world is light. It's even faster than AK-47 bullet. And I was like, that's cool. Yeah, I know it's. And another kid gets up in class and says, the problem with the speed of light, it gets to my room too early in the morning. And I love it. So I'm going to show you, these are works I've done with children. I've collaborated with a bunch of kids in New York. And I unlearned from children. And I use my art to pay attention. This is my latest series of artwork. It's called We Are Like Animals. And what I want to do is, for me, my grandmother told me animals are magical creatures. Somehow we seem to have unlearned the beauty of animals. In fact, we seem to educate children out of so many things. We unlearn the wrong things. The way I was taught in school, for example, I went to a good convent school, and everything was taught by rote. I even remember everything I learned. 2KMNO4 plus 16HCl gives 2KCl plus 2MnCl2 plus 8H2 plus 5Cl2, preparation of chlorine. So I remember in my chemistry class, I was caught caricaturing. My teacher said, my boy, stand up. So I stood up. Yes, sir. He said, are you concentrating? I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. He didn't ask what I was concentrating on. So I said, yes, sir. He said, what is concentration, my boy? I said, sir, concentration is the centralization of one's attention in a particular direction for a long duration. The last time I did not know the definition, I was rusticated. Apparently it means off to your rustic roots, dude. But anyway, everything was taught by rote. In fact, even friendship, love, family, patriotism, everything was taught by rote. And now that I have my own children, 2 of my own children, I keep thinking, what kind of an environment will I create for them? And what will I teach them? What bubble will I create for them? And how will I help them unlearn that bubble? So, I have a project I want to share with you. Recently, my son was at my studio a couple of weeks ago, and he was messing with all my gadgets. I'm a big gadget freak. And while he was messing, I had this epiphany. I thought, what if I can teach open-mindedness at the early stage, at the toddler level? So I came up with this idea. It's a children's book, but it's not just a normal book. I want to show you a short video.
This particular story is about the things that parents do with their children. By default, it begins with a homosexual couple. Appa is the Tamil word for dad. If you're opposed to the idea, simply shake it and you get a heterosexual couple. Shake it again and you'll even have a lesbian couple. There's nothing more nostalgic than a good potty morning with your dad or mom, right? And then we go have a nice bath, and if you're like me, you pick up the crayon and mess around with it, like this. Then you go and change into your Sunday best, weather the occasional diaper change, play on your computer, and disappear into La La Land. You can play giddy up, giddy up, giddy up with your folks. Yes, whether they are two dads or two moms too. I like to play tickle, tickle, tickle with my son. You should see his face after I've bitten into a chili. That little sadist.
You know, it's an iPad book, and every time you shake it, something happens. If you notice that the sexuality of the parents changed every time you shook it, but not the relationship between parent and child. And in my next book, what I'm doing is every time you shake it, the interiors go up in value. They get pimped up, you know. And I had this naughty idea. Later this month, I'm going to be speaking with a very interesting person, the former president of Pakistan, Musharraf. And I'm also going to be meeting the Indian Prime Minister. I had this really bad idea. I wanted to take and show them, present an iPad book concept. So it's the history of Indian independence. Lovely, patriotic, beautiful. Except you shake it, and you get Pakistan's perspective. Shake it again, you get Bangladesh's perspective. May differ a bit. Thank you. It's a fat chance they'll buy it, but anyway. See? If you notice that everything I've told you, my life and my art inform each other. And for me, art is a tool by which I can learn more about myself and unlearn from life. I asked myself, how does this unlearning happen? I keep saying unlearning. And I keep thinking about it, and I think the one thing common between all my unlearning experiences is that you cannot unlearn if you're not willing to be vulnerable. And for me, my family, oh, nice family. You're supposed to say, oh, thank you. No, for me, my family allows me to feel vulnerable. I put them above even my career. And in fact, all my life, I always thought of myself as a Calvin and Hobbes book. When you open the door, you have someone jump at you and you roll down and you hug. My parents are loving, but they're not huggy, touchy-feely kind of love. I have to tell you a funny, vulnerable, unlearning story. My wife and I were in California. We were really stressed out by lawyers. You know, artists have to deal with lawyers sometimes. And we wanted to get as far away from people as possible and go to this nice naturist resort and be with nature. And nobody told me in California, naturist is another word for nudist. Okay, I go in, open the door, and I see a sea of naked people. There's even a guy doing yoga in the buff. You can picture how. I run back in and I said, Nate, we are a zebra in a horse farm. What the hell do we do? And she said, we have two options. We can pretend this never happened, get the hell out of here, or we strip and join them. Of course we did the latter. Otherwise I wouldn't tell you the story. And it was an amazing experience. I came away with a totally different point of view. Not about nudists, but about myself and my relationship with my body. And I realized that everyone's body is flawed. Everyone's. Since then, my work has only shown real bodies. And if at all I use the classical body, it's politicized. I'll leave it at that. Anyway, another vulnerable story. I was in Memphis, Tennessee, and I backpacked my way there, and I was doing some cartoons for a bunch of dudes who thought I was, one of the guys thought I was an illegal immigrant. And he treated me like shit. He basically was a big bully, and I'm a vegetarian, and he gave me raw meat every day to eat. He shouted at me in front of people. He didn't let me bathe in the hotel. He in fact said, let me take you clubbing. He took me to this place on Beale Street, I think, left me in the car at 8 o'clock and came back at 6 in the morning drunk to take me home. I felt like crying. I just hated this. I've never been treated or violated like that. I wanted to call home and just cry to my mom, but what do I tell my mom? Ma, I'm being treated as a non-person. I mean, I don't know what to say. So anyway, the sweet lady who had seen this happening snuck me some food. And I was so touched, and I sent her a painting. The next day she called and said, you know, my family would love to host you for a couple of days if you're up to it. And I was like, family? Host? Yay! I jumped at the opportunity. Now, unfortunately, the day I was supposed to go and visit her, her husband had to leave town for some work. And she started freaking out because she had invited this total stranger and she has 3 young, beautiful girls at home. And I was freaking out because I'm staying in the middle of an oasis with some random family. But I went. I went, and we had such a lovely time, and they end up being my family. In fact, when all the kids turned 16, it was my job to go and teach them driving. Although they met with a small accident, a plane landed on their car. And I don't know how to teach them to avoid that. But that's a different story. But I found a family literally in the middle of nowhere. And when I got married, Purna came and sat next to my mother and was my mother, with my mother to give me away. And while I was hanging out with those kids, I saw a lot of cartoons. I caught up on, on American Cartoons 101. And surprisingly, in one of the Disney movies, I saw this quote that really, really touched me. It said, "You think the only people who are people who look and think like you. But if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you'll learn things you never knew. I hope all of you one day walk the footsteps of some stranger." Thank you very much.